Whoa.
All right, so this question I'm answering now is it wrong to not believe in God? I've gotten this question a number of times from kids, and they word it differently. Do all atheists go to hell? Is being an atheist bad? Does God hate atheists? It's different ways in which it's worded. Okay, first of all, an atheist is someone who says there's no such thing as God, right? If you are not sure if God exists, you're like, that would be called agnostic, okay? So atheist is someone who says, I'm convinced that there's no such thing as God. Agnostic is like, I don't know if there's a God. Christians are people who are confident that there is a God and they have decided to follow him and to serve him with their lives, all right? And there's obviously other categories as well, but we'll just stick with those three and keep it simple for the purpose of this question. So the question is it wrong to not believe in God? It's wrong to not believe in what is true. Right? You have to sometimes be intellectually dishonest in order to ignore evidence and say, oh, you know what, I still don't believe in this, or I still think this. And people do this all the time. People will hold opinions, and even when evidence is there that completely contradicts their opinions, they're going to stand by them. So by that standard, it would be wrong to not believe in God if really, really compelling evidence was made available. On the other hand, it might be wrong in a way to believe in God when there's too much evidence to the contrary, or a complete lack of evidence, as some people claim that there is. What you want to do is you want to seek truth. Jesus said, if you seek it, you will find it, and the truth will set you free. And so I really believe that. I really claim that. I want to actually know what is true, and I'm going to trust God that he will lead me to truth, and I'm going to do some honest questioning. There isn't evidence for God that is so strong, so powerful, that it's impossible to be an atheist. For some reason, a lot of atheists, they put that to you. You say, hey, if there's proof that there's God, show it to me. I was like, well, what kind of proof would be acceptable? And the only kind that would be acceptable is the kind that absolutely nobody would deny. Like the sky is rent open and the stars spell out the words, hey, Bill, I'm here, I'm real. If I see that, then I'll believe. And you go, well, we don't have that kind of evidence. If we had that kind of evidence, everybody in the world would believe in God, and there would be absolutely no debate. So honestly, that kind of evidence is not there. There is some evidence that leads us to think that there is a God. Is it wrong to not believe in God? Yeah, if you ignore that evidence. And so what I have found is a lot of people will say, well, I don't believe in God because I don't think there's any evidence. And you say, okay, well, here's a piece of evidence. And they say, no. Well, what about this one? And no, I don't believe it, right? And so you say, okay, well, there is evidence. There's proof out there, but you're not willing to look at it, which means you're being intellectually dishonest because you want to continue to hold the position that you hold. Now listen, before everyone gets mad at me, an atheist could say the same thing about a Christian, right? That they might say, well, there is evidence that Christianity is false. Or they might say that you can't actually offer evidence that there is no God. The burden of proof is on the person making the claim. I would say to the burden of proof thing, what they mean by that is this. If I'm in an argument with an atheist and I say, there is a God, and he says, there is no God, I have to prove it. He can't prove that there's no God. How can you prove there isn't something, right? I don't believe in unicorns. I can't prove there's no such thing as unicorns. But if someone came to me and said that there's such a thing as unicorns, I'd say, okay, well, to settle this, you can prove it, right? But I actually think that the position that we need to take to start with is agnosticism, saying, I just don't know if there's God or not. A lot of people kind of default to atheism, and they say, until I have absolute, incontrovertible evidence that God is real, I'm not going to believe in God. What you're doing is you're setting a standard up there that, frankly, I think is frightening. What if the creator of the universe created the universe in such a way, this kind of intimate detail that he does it, that it's like he wants you to just look at the universe and realize that there is a mind, there is an artist behind this. Now, it's not 100% convincing, it's not 100% compelling, because could this thing, this tree beside me, could it have evolved completely by accident? Theoretically, I suppose it could. But suppose I go to heaven and I'm at the pearly gates and God's like, yo, why didn't you believe in me? And I go, well, I saw absolutely no evidence for you. And he goes, did you not see everything? Like, maybe it's not up to God to prove himself to us. We have this kind of pride. I honestly think that there is a pride that's involved. This pride that says, unless you convince me that you exist, I'm not going to believe in you. Too bad for you, God. And God's like, no, I made the universe. No, I'm everything that's good. So you not believing in me doesn't hurt me nearly as much as it hurts you. Maybe we have a responsibility to honestly ask the questions. And then maybe if God reveals himself to us, maybe that's a gift. Right? Like Christianity has always taught that faith itself is a gift. So if you do have faith, congratulations. Don't brag about it. Don't be proud about it, because God has given that to you, right? God will reveal himself to us if we ask. Ask and you shall receive. Knock and the door will be opened. Seek and ye shall find. I really believe that. And so I challenge people watching this video, go and ask those questions and see if God will reveal himself to you. But continue to ask. Where I think atheism does become a sin is when people say, no, I already know. And I've seen this time and time again. I've seen it a lot with teenagers, young kids, right, who just decide, I'm in grade 8, I already know everything, right? And you say, well, what about this miracle? And like, miracles. And you just kind of go, I like to think I'm a reasonably intelligent guy. I believe it's a miracle. I've looked into it, right? One of the talks I like to give, actually someone has asked me about miracles, so I'll make a video about it, but is of the greatest miracles in the history of the world. Do this, okay? You're on your computer right now. Google greatest miracles. See what comes up. Try miracles from other religions. See what comes up. It's uncanny how many of them are from the Catholic faith and how few are from the rest of the world's religions combined. This, to me, is evidence that God is real. Even if you deny, the fact that DNA is so impressive that it seems like it's been programmed in a way that a computer is programmed, and when you see a computer's programmed, you assume that there's a computer programmer. Even if you deny that life is a mystery, life itself, where did it come from? How did it evolve? That if the universe started with a Big Bang, which, by the way, Catholics can believe in, okay, the Big Bang Theory, one of the original proponents of it was a Catholic priest, Georges Lemaitre. Even if you say the Big Bang was just a coincidence, right? You look at these miracles, and you look at the testimonies of people who've encountered God, and all of a sudden, there's a lot of liars out there. If these miracles aren't real, then the people who are telling you about them are liars, right? Look at Padre Pio, who had holes all the way through his hands, the stigmata, right? Either the guy was a psychopath or he was a saint. You can't have a middle ground on this one. Either he drove holes through his hands in order to try to put himself out as a saint and say, I've got stigmata, or it was a real miracle. But what's crazy is he had those holes all the way through his hands for 50 years. And then after 50 years, they disappeared. And there was a total healing. And then you say, well, what about that? You say that to an atheist, and I've done that. And they're like, well, the people who say that there was absolutely no holes after 50 years, those people must be liars. Okay, so now it's not just Padre Pio who's a liar. Now we have a whole conspiracy. And so that's the problem, is once you actually start checking it out, the evidence for Christianity, in my opinion, is surprisingly strong. So I'm the kind of person who I want to go where the facts lead, right? I question what I believe all the time, and I think as a man of integrity, as a man who values truth, I think that's the right thing to do. So I recognize even by going down this process, someone's going to be like, my child had faith and watched your videos and started questioning everything. Please do. Please question everything. And if you are not sure, please question everything. Here's where I was. Let's imagine that you start off and middle ground is agnostic, okay? And you can go all the way from atheist to hardcore Christian, but middle ground is agnostic. You have no evidence either way. Every piece of evidence would either push you this way or push you that way. So you think of evidence for God not being real, okay? Maybe the fact that the theory of evolution is standing up pretty well in science. Maybe it pushes us this way a little bit. By the way, Catholics can believe in evolution too, but anyway. Maybe the fact that there's a big pandemic of coronavirus going on right now. So there's a lot of suffering in the world. Suffering, that doesn't make sense with my image of God, right? And so this would push you further towards atheism, still in the agnosticism range. But what about evidence for? Evidence like miracles or the historicity of the Bible, or the testimonies of people that you know, or personal experience. And so what happened to me was the evidence for outweighs the evidence against, because like I said, the two strongest pieces of evidence I could think of were suffering and science, and actually Catholics are on board with everything that science says. We can believe in the Big Bang, we can believe in evolution, no problem. So that one isn't that strong of an argument against. And suffering is the single strongest argument, I think, against Christianity, right? Why do bad things happen to good people? But when you consider that the most powerful symbol in Christianity is a crucifix, that God, the creator of the universe, suffered and died on a cross, you realize suffering isn't a contradiction in Christianity. It's actually central to what it means to be a Christian. And so when you start looking at these things and you start kind of checking out the evidence, my opinion is it kind of gets you over here. So there was this guy, his name was Pascal. You might have heard of him because in math, they talk about Pascal's triangle. He was a brilliant mathematician, also a theologian, which means he talked about God as kind of a scientific discipline, theology, okay? And so he was a theologian, he's a mathematician, really smart guy, and he came up with this thing that's called Pascal's wager. And what Pascal's wager said is, look, if you're agnostic, if you're in the middle and you really don't know, is Christianity true or is atheism true? You really can't tell. It would be better for you to act as though Christianity were true than to act as though atheism were true. Now listen, he's not telling you to compromise your integrity. If you're like way over here, yeah, you might as well live like there's no God, okay? But if you're kind of in the middle or just a little bit over here or a little bit over there, it would be a better wager to act as if Christianity is true. Why? Because if you die and Christianity is true and you were Christian, you gain everything. If you die and Christianity was not true, but you are Christian, you lose nothing. If you die and Christianity was not true and you are atheist, you gain nothing. But if you die and Christianity was true and you rejected God, you could lose everything. So when you consider what's at stake, it makes sense to live your life as a Christian. It could be just kind of like a little nudge into the Christianity thing. So now, to be an atheist might be ignoring the evidence, okay? It also might be a really unnecessary risk, a dangerous risk. And the thing that I'm most afraid of is that atheists, again, they're going to go to God and be like, God, you should have done a better job. Why didn't you show yourself better? And we're going to come to God, the creator of the universe, with that kind of attitude. That is scary to me. The last thing I want to say is this. Do atheists go to hell? Not necessarily. All right? We can trust, we can hope in God that God will save everyone. And so I imagine a possibility that an atheist goes before the throne room of God and says, you know what, I did look at the evidence. Maybe Christianity wasn't available to him. He lived in a culture that Christians never touched, or lived in a culture, somewhere in China where you heard of Christians, but it's just kind of this foreign ideology. I didn't really consider it. Okay, but I looked at the evidence. I did what I could. I tried to live my life for love. I tried to live nobly. I didn't realize you were real. I didn't exactly reject you. I just, I could see that God would have mercy on that person. But I wouldn't approach the throne room of God with arrogance and just be like, you should have proved yourself to me. I think that would be very, very dangerous.